has the same meaning of reaching, to reach, right? Because in the Islamic teachings, we have this idea of taklif, moral responsibility. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this concept throughout the Quran, right? And we know that it's there as well in Surah Al-Baqarah in the ending, right? La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah does not burden anyone except to their potential. So this idea of taklif, moral responsibility, right, it depends on one specific thing, right, which is aql, which is the intellect. Now, as very young children, like 3 to 5, their intellect is not complete, right? So they don't have the full discerning power to decide between right and wrong, what's good or bad, what's beneficial or what's not beneficial for them. Rather, it's the parents that will do that for them, right? Will tell them, don't touch the fire, and other things, right? But then when they get a bit older, it's around 7 or 9, then what happens is called tamyiz. Then they reach a level where it's called discernment, that now they're able, that there is some ability to distinguish between good and bad, benefit and harm, right and wrong, but it's still deficient. But there's a point where a person, their intellect becomes to the extent that they can make their own decisions. And at that point, a person becomes responsible. And this is where in Islam, a person is an adult, which is called bulugh. It's the same word that they use for puberty. There, in Islam, we don't have this in-between zone that you have young adults or old children. You don't have that. We don't have this in-between zone where a person is no longer a child. They're too old to be a child, but they're too young to be an adult. That they're floating in the middle. It's kind of what they call adolescence. This, in Islam, this is a very strange concept, right? Adolescence, because historically, once you reached the age of maturity, you are morally responsible for your decisions, right? But it is the job of the parents, right, to prepare, and for the teachers to prepare the children before that time happens, right? So, and this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Muru awladakum bis-salati wa hum abna'u sab'a." Like, command your children to pray when they are 7. وَاضْرِبُوهُمْ عَلَيْهَا وَهُمْ أَبْنَاءُ عَشْرٍ. And then discipline them for not doing it when they are at 10. Right? So this is a preparation for adulthood. That children need to be introduced into adulthood, shown how to be a man. Right? And this, the mentioning in the hadith of the prayer is just, it's accidental, as they say, ittifaqi, that it doesn't mean only the prayer. Meaning all of the obligations of Islam and all of the teachings of Islam, including the etiquettes and the comportment that a Muslim should have, should be taught from 7, right? And then should be enforced by 10. That way when they reach the age of puberty, which we'll talk about, the minimum being 12, right, for men, that by that time they reach that, it has become part of their life as well already. Right? And if you think about it, if one is supposed to start praying by 7, right, and especially from 10, right? By the time that they're 12, if they're not praying, something went wrong, right? Because that's 5 years of opportunity to make this beautiful thing called prayer a part of our lives, right? So the pivotal points by which we are responsible for our choices is intellect, moral responsibility, which starts from when a person reaches puberty or maturity, and from that point on, all of their sins are their sins. All of their good deeds are their good deeds, that they are now rewarded and or punished for every choice that they make. And the angels, alayhim as-salam, as Allah says, will write down every single deed that every person will ever do. Right? Kiraman katibin ya'lamuna ma taf'alun. Allah says that they are noble angels who are scribes. that they know what you are doing. So at this point, every choice is your choice. And no one is forcing you. So in Islam, you're a man from maturity. Right? So if you choose to do a good deed, you get the reward. If you choose to harm someone or to disrespect a parent or to backbite someone or whatever it may be, then one has to live up to their responsibilities. And the door of tawbah, repentance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is always open. Right? So because of this this aspect of being responsible, right? That if whatever I choose, I'm going to be held accountable for that. That knowledge is necessary, because the basis by which we choose is knowledge. We don't just choose because, oh, that sounds cooler than the other one. Right? So this thing sounds cool, this one doesn't sound so cool, so let me do this. That's not how we decide, right? That we decide on the basis of knowledge. So it's important that children, right, from a very young age, should start to learn what it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. And this is a blessing of Islam, that there is not a single aspect of our lives where we are without guidance, where we don't know what to do. We don't know what Allah wants. Right? There is nothing that a human being could come across throughout their life and throughout the vicissitudes of time, except that we have guidance from the Prophet ﷺ, what to do, right? Even to the smallest details. Right? But in order to access that treasure of prophetic guidance, one has to have knowledge. Right? And most of the time, that knowledge is from the household itself. Right? The mother and the father are the madrasa of the child. They are the school of the child from a very early age. Right? And the first and most important things that the child should learn is love of Allah and the love of His Messenger. Right? And because by means of that love will come forth all other efforts and all other seeking of knowledge and acting in obedience, all of that will stem forth from their love of Allah and the love of Islam and the love of the Prophet ﷺ. And as well, right, anyone who has, whether it be religious or worldly goals or aims or objectives, knowledge is a necessity. If you want to be an engineer, you can't be an engineer without knowledge. Right? You want to be a scientist, you can't be a scientist without knowledge. So knowledge, as Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah said, that if you want the world, فَعَلَيْكَ بِالْعِلْمِ, then you have to have knowledge. If you want the akhirah, if you want the next world, then فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالْعِلْمِ, then you have to have knowledge. Right? Even the most successful businessmen in the world, you'll see that if you look at all of their lives, there are certain qualities that they had. One is that they worked very hard. They were very disciplined and they had knowledge. So I just wanted to start with that because it is an honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have the ability to choose. And this is the amana that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has presented to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, and they all refused to carry it out of fear of this responsibility. But the human being chose it. Right? وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانِ. So this idea of choice, that you have the choice. You can choose to be amongst those who have traveled the path of the prophets, who have traveled the path of the righteous, those who are beloved to Allah in this world, who are beloved to Allah in the next world, those whose graves are gardens of paradise, those who are living in paradise in this world before they even die. Right? Or you can choose to be amongst those who are completely distanced from Allah, distanced from a true purpose in life. Right? One can choose to be amongst those who live a superficial life, that they have outward benefits, but are depressed inwardly. And we were talking this morning, some of you were here, that if you were to look, just a quick search on the news, that in the past 5 years, it's an astonishing rate of billionaires who killed themselves. Right? Millionaires, billionaires, musicians, clothing designers, artists, actors, the richest of the rich, the most popular on social media, but they took their own lives. Why? Just quick, while I take a sip of water, why do you think they did it? They had billions of dollars. What would draw somebody to give up on life even though their bank balance was 7 digits? What are they missing? Anyone, don't be shy. First one to answer gets a prize. Yeah? Happiness. They're missing happiness. Okay. But doesn't money buy happiness?
Knowledge.
They're missing knowledge. Okay, that works too. There's no wrong answer. Right? Okay, what is it that they could not buy with that money? They couldn't buy happiness?
Faith.
Faith? Good. Okay. The akhirah? Good. MashaAllah. Well prepared answers. MashaAllah. Right, so there are certain things in this world that you can't buy with money. There are certain realities in this world that cannot be obtained through outward means, through status or through fame or through fortune. Right? And those are the things which the soul needs the most, but they cannot be bought. Right? But it all comes back to a choice. Right? And Allah talks in the Quran, right? And we should all try to read at least one page of the Quran every day, right? In Arabic and the English. Right? Allah mentions in the Quran all of the time different types of people. Right? Like for instance, you have Fir'aun. Fir'aun had so many followers that they looked like pegs in the ground from a distance. That's why he said, "Well, Fir'aun dhil awtad." Right? And Fir'aun, the one who possessed the pegs, I mean, thousands and thousands of followers. Right? He never got sick a single day in his life, as the scholars of tafsir mentioned. He had rivers flowing beneath his castle. He had all of the dunya, but it never worked. He ended up not being successful in this life or in the next. Okay, so we'll come back to some of them because it's very important to understand what is the criteria for success. The criteria for success has nothing to do with outward means, has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do with fame, has nothing to do with fortune. Right? So this idea of entering into adulthood, right, it starts from the minimum age is 12. Right? At 12 years old, it is possible that some of the signs of puberty come about. Right? And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail soon. But starting from 12 until about 15, that one will see different changes in themselves. Right? Mentally, right? Things that used to be cool to you before will no longer be cool. Well, that's old stuff. Right? I remember when I was young, it was the exact time that Pokemon came out. Everybody was talking about Pokemon. Right? I absolutely hated it. Right? Just, no offense to any Pokemon likers here. Right? But it was just after that point where these things stopped being cool to me. Right? There will be a point where what you thought was cool before is no longer cool. Your viewpoint on life will change. This is called, right, just general maturity. But there are also physical changes as well. Right? There are physical changes that will occur, and you'll notice them. Right? And it's nothing to be worried about or nothing to feel awkward about. Right? This is natural, and everyone will go through it. Right? So the signs of puberty meaning what we mentioned before, entering into adulthood, right? Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, right? The minimum is 12 years old, right? So when a person is 12 years old, and many of you raised your hands when we asked if anyone was 12 years old, when someone is 12 years old, it is possible that they experience some discharge, right, which is called semen. Semen in Arabic, mani. Right? Generally, it might happen while one is sleeping. Right? So from 12, it should be expected that it might happen. Right? that if this comes out, that means for certain you are adults. You are now an adult in Islamic sense. You are morally responsible for your actions. And there are certain rulings of what to do when that happens. Right? Generally, anything that comes out of the private parts, right, front or back, you have to make wudu. Right? That means your wudu is broken, whether it be urine or stool or wind, right? It will break the wudu. But if semen comes out, which is the definition that they give in the book, right? It's a white liquid which is kind of thick. Right? If that comes out, then one is in a state of major ritual impurity, right? And the wudu is not enough. You have to take a full bath, a full shower, right? And the conditions of a full bath is that every part of the body must be wet, right? Including the hair, right? Including between the fingers, between the toes, every single part, right? And one must rinse out their mouth completely and bring water to their nose, to the soft part of their nose, right? Up to where the cartilage is. If you do that, then now you are back in a state of a state of purity. You can pray salat again, right? You can touch the Quran. You can enter the masjid. Right? We'll save the fiqh aspects. But if it doesn't happen at 12, right, it could happen anywhere between 12 and 15. If one is reached 15 years old and has not experienced any of that, then legally they are considered mature, whether any semen came out or not. Right? They are legally responsible at that age. So for those who have raised their hands at 15, whether anything happened or not, you are responsible. Right? Whereas prior to that, then if from 12 or up, right, any semen comes out, then one is now responsible. If not, then not yet, until 15 or until something comes out. Right, so that's one of the things that will happen, right, as the body starts to change. Right, and it's not a science class. We're not going to talk about, right, enzymes and thyroids right. But along with that, there are other signs. That is the major sign, and upon that is the Islamic rulings. Is on that. Right, it's not on other signs, but you will have. Right? One will have growth spurt. They will all of a sudden get taller, get bigger. Right? Their body will, as they say, fill in. Right? Their jawbones will become more distinct. There's many different things. Right? And that's that stage right there where one is getting taller, and these can be slightly awkward, right? Because one is getting taller, right? Getting bigger, but not yet there. It's like the person who wants to grow an afro. Right? When I was, how old is it? 18, I had an afro. It was about this big. It's like a big sun on my head, except it was black. Right? But there's this, when you grow an afro, anybody here ever grow an afro? Right? It's a random question, but right? If you did, you would know what I'm talking about. If you decide to grow an afro, afros are really big, bushy type hairstyle. Right? I don't recommend it. It's too much hassle, right? And it's not in style anymore, right? But when you grow an afro, it's an active choice. Okay, I'm going to do it, right? So in the beginning, your hair is short, right? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? When it gets really long, then everybody gets it. Okay, afro. Right? When it's short, everybody understands, right? It's a normal hairstyle. But in between, there's that awkward stage, like, bro, are you going to cut your hair or not? Right? It looks bad. Right? So similar. In between, there's an awkward stage. If you get past that, then everything is normal. Right? But it can be emotionally tough, right? Especially if one goes to... How many here go to public school? MashaAllah. Private Islamic school? Yeah, so especially being in public school, right? Even though the children are all the same age and are all going through it at the same time, they tend to pick on each other and bully each other, right? Because of certain things like this. One's a little bit tall, right? But these children are immature, so not you guys. You guys are good, right? But also, like one's voice will start to change, will become deeper, right? Sometimes if you speak, you might like kind of crack a little bit, right? It make you go high pitched and then come back down, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's normal. Actually, scientifically, it's a miracle. It's amazing how Allah created the human being, right? But then, along with that, right, you have like, hair growth that one didn't have before, like pubic hair, hair around the private parts, right? Hair in the underarms area, right? Mustache, beards, right? All of these things. And there's certain etiquettes that the Prophet ﷺ taught us in regards to all of that. Right? And we'll be touching on each one of those when we talk about grooming and hygiene. Right? Also, one may begin to perspire or sweat more often. Right? Not in the winter, because Canadian winters are, mashallah. Right? But in the summer, one might sweat quite often. Right? So one may need to take showers daily, or take showers more often. Right? And some people sweat a lot, some people don't sweat a lot. So it's all, right? If one sweats a lot, therefore, shower a lot. Right? If one doesn't sweat a lot, then they don't need to shower as often. Right? Also, it is prophetic sunnah. Right? It is the sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ to always smell good. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he was known that if he walked down a certain street, right, people would know that he walked down that street even though he had already gone long ago, because of the smell that remained from his body. He naturally smelled good, but he also liked to apply perfume, right, or misk, right? And it was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to rub the heads of the orphans. That he would put his hand on their heads. So the orphan who the Prophet rubbed his hand on would be known amongst all the other orphans because of the smell of the hand of the Prophet ﷺ, the traces still on his head. And they would actually go and try to get some for themselves. Constantly smelled good. Right? And these are not just outward things. Angels love good smells. Angels love beauty. Angels love symmetry. Right? Everything that is beautiful, angels love. So if a person is constantly, right, in a state of beauty, both in their character, their speech, the way they smell, the way they dress, right, then angels will crowd around them. Whereas the jinn, the shayateen, the evil jinn, right, they love bad smells, they love dirty places, they love darkness and evil things, which is why Halloween does not need any explanation of whether it's good or not. Right, so the body, the smell, right? So you use perfume quite often, deodorant, right? And deodorant is very important, especially if one sweats a lot. Right? As they say, this is very informal. Remember, they say that common sense is like deodorant. Those who need it don't have it. But you'll get it later, right? Mustache, right? Mustaches will grow, right? Beards will grow, right? Or facial hair, I should say, right? And it was the prophetic sunnah that if one is going to keep their beard, to keep it nice, right? To keep it nice. Right? The Prophet ﷺ constantly combed his beard. He constantly he put olive oil in his beard to keep it healthy, right? If someone's going to grow a beard and then it's all over the place, split ends here and there, then that's not representing the sunnah in a beautiful way. Right? That we should take care of our appearance, even our hair on our head, right? And we'll talk about that slightly. Right, so are there any questions on that? Just obviously you have the papers, you can write whenever you want, right? But if there's any questions just about that. For any brave individuals who don't need the paper. So, anytime, inshallah. Okay, tamam. So we already talked about moral responsibility, that prior to reaching puberty, right, the reward of the child, all the good deeds that the child does, goes to their parents. It doesn't mean don't do it because you don't want your parents to get it, right? You get reward as well inwardly, right? But the sins of the children are not written for anyone. They're not against the parents, nor are they against the child, unless it was due to the neglect of the parents in teaching the child, right? Then there's implications on the parent for that, right? And one person, he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, "My child is disobedient," right? Aq, meaning a disobedient child. So, and he explained his reasons, and then the child asked permission of the Prophet ﷺ, "Can I explain Can I explain my side of the story?" And the Prophet heard him out, and he said that my father named me with a terrible name. The name had a bad meaning, right? He never taught me how to read the Quran. He never taught me how to pray. He never taught me how to fast, right? And he listed everything. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he looked at the parent and he said, "Aqaqtahu qabla an ya'uqaq." You have disobeyed him before he disobeyed you. Right? So it's a mutual relationship between parent and child. The parent has rights over the child, right? And that is obvious throughout the Quran. But the child has rights as well, right? But when the child enters the age of maturity, right, whether or not their parents taught them, whether or not they were taught how to pray, it is obligatory on them to seek knowledge, to find out how to pray, to find out how to fast. Right? And now with internet, right, we have much access to great classes, very simple, and it doesn't take very long to learn the basics. Right? To learn how to pray, to learn how to read the Quran properly, right? It's not difficult. Right? One guy, he would say, and Imam Haddad mentions this in his book, he would say that I don't want to go to any classes. He said, "Why not?" He said, "Because if I learn something, then I have to practice it." Right? Good point, right? Wrong. Right? Why is that wrong? Anyone want to defend the man? Go ahead. But why is he wrong for that viewpoint?
Because he said after the age of maturity, you have to seek knowledge and avoid the law.
MashaAllah. Because once a person reaches the age of maturity, right, they are responsible to follow the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? The fact that they don't know what the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on them. That's not a valid excuse. Not knowing is not an excuse. Right? You want to say something?
Yeah, if it's a good thing to do, then they should practice.
Yeah. So some of the good deeds are natural. You can know them intuitively. You don't need a teacher to tell you that helping someone across the street, an elder across the street, is a good thing. Right? But there are certain acts that we only know through revelation, like how to make wudu. Right? So it's obligatory, whether we know it or not, but it's obligatory for us to find out. Right? But, mashallah, here in Canada, especially in Mississauga, right, there are so many classes, so many scholars, so many teachers who have authority to teach, who are people of upright character, right, at your fingertips, right? Hundreds of classes streamed online. You could sit in your room and just watch one class a day, right? A few months, you'll finish the basics that you need to know. Right? So it's not difficult. Okay, tamam. Right, so going back slightly to what we were talking about the physical changes, right? That one enters into puberty, right? By the ways that we mentioned, or one reaches 15 years old, right? There are certain etiquettes that they should uphold, right? And we have yet to get to the ideal of being a man, actually being an upright individual, chivalrous, right? But we'll talk about that. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ, in the hadith that we mentioned previously, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said command your children to pray when they are 7 and discipline them for it when they are 10. There's the last part of the hadith is وَفَرِّقُوا بَيْنَهُمْ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, that separate between them in the beddings. Right? That when a child reaches the age of 10, right, especially when they reach the age of puberty, right, they should not sleep together with the parents. Right? They should not sleep together with the parents, especially, right, if both of the parents are there. Right? A boy should not sleep together with his sister, right, at those ages. Right? It can be in the same room, but not under the same bedding, not on the same bedding. Right? Also, right, that one, and this is not just when you're 12 to 15, but one should not just enter into the rooms of their parents, right, without knocking, without asking permission to enter. One should not enter into the rooms of their siblings, right, without knocking or right, because people have privacy, and especially when a child becomes adult, right, they have more of a privacy as well, right? Also, there is a certain portion of the male body as well as the female body which is private, right? And in Islam, it's considered to be one's nakedness. Like, to show that would be sinful, and right. So for the man, it's between.
For the boy, out of respect for the Shaykh and the class, it would be out of the cell phone. That would be great, so we can focus on the class, inshallah.
I don't see anybody with cell phones.
I was told from outside. So I just
Okay.
passing the message. I'm not the.
Are there cameras in here
Thank you.
besides that one? Right here. So, right. So for the male, right, that which is between the navel or the belly button to just below the knees is off limits. You're not allowed to show it to anyone, right? And you're not allowed to look at any other male in those parts. Right? And I know for those who are in public school, this might, especially in gym class, people wear short shorts. Right? It's not permissible to look at anyone between their knees and their navels for the men. Right? As for the women, right, their entire body except for their face, their hands, and their feet are considered, right, nakedness. So we're not allowed to look at other parts of their body, except for the face, the hands, and the feet. Right? So those who are in public school, the other girls, they don't have their hair covered and everything. Right? There's a difference between seeing and looking. Right? It doesn't mean that you have to walk around like this, with tunnel vision, and wear some special glasses, or put your scarf in some way that you can somehow just not see anything. No. Right? You walking past, your peripheral vision is not in your control. Right? But to stare or to look, to intentionally look at other parts of their body, that is not permissible. Right? And these things have spiritual harms. The Prophet ﷺ said that one impermissible glance is like a poison arrow from the arrows of shaitan. Right? That whoever abandons that glance for the sake of Allah, Allah will put in their hearts a light that they will experience their faith with. Right? So that is in regards to the parts that are not allowed to be seen. Right? Also, to look at their face, their hands, their feet, or even the parts that are permissible to look with desire is not permissible as well. To look at anything with desire, right, is not permissible. Right? And let alone touching. Right? Let alone touching. So we'll get to that though. So we mentioned already about hygiene, right, about smelling good, right, combing one's hair, right, keeping one's hair combed and nice, right, keeping one's clothes clean. Maybe majority of you, that the people of the house will clean the clothes, right? But if not, then it's good to learn it yourself as well. Right? Also to iron one's clothes to look nice, to keep oneself appearance presentable. right? Out of respect for ourselves. Right? Also, grooming. Right? So we already mentioned about when this time period happens, that pubic hair will start to grow, hair, underarm hair, and so forth. Right? So all of this needs to be groomed. Needs to be. The best is for the pubic hair. The pubic hair is the hair that grows around the front, the male private part, as well as the hair between the rear end, the buttocks, as they say. Right? It should be shaved, right? Preferably once a week. Right? And that is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And many of the Sahaba, they would do all of their grooming on Thursday nights, in preparation for Jumu'ah. Because Thursday night in Islam, the night after Maghrib becomes the new day. So Thursday after Maghrib is Friday, technically. It's already Jumu'ah. So they would prepare for their Jumu'ah once a week, right, by shaving. Right? And right, one should be honest with their parents, or I'm sure most of you have your own money and your own time to go to the store and just buy a decent quality razor blade, right? But to be careful not to cut yourself, or to do it in such a way that is right, methodical and not rushed, because it might hurt. And generally, people will learn their lesson, right, and then do it better the next time. Right? Now, in regards to the underarm hair, right, the most ideal situation is to pluck it, not to shave it. Right? Because by shaving it, it grows thicker, and then later on, if you kind of realize that, oh, I should have plucked instead, it's going to be very painful to go back. Right? But in the beginning, when it's first starting to grow, it's very easy to remove by plucking. Right? If you want to, since you're in 2020, you want to get technological about it, they have this machine called an epilator. An epilator, it's a glorified plucker. That's all it is. It plucks for you. You press on, aim it, it plucks. Right? It's not a math problem. It's not geometry. Right? It's quite straightforward. Right? But anybody who has already started to shave, right, then still it would be best to do the epilator. It will hurt for sure in the beginning, but you will be very glad that you did it later on. Right? And right, also, because by removing the underarm hair, right, even if one does sweat, it won't smell as bad. It won't smell as bad. If one leaves the underarm hair and then sweats on top of that, there's no end to how bad it could get. Have mercy on your classmates. Just joking. You come into homeroom midsummer day. You say, I'm tired, and everybody's like, whoa, stay there. No, we don't want that. Right? So, all right, so the sunnah is once a week. The sunnah is once a week, and this is the best. Right? And these types of things, one of the wisdoms behind them is that it teaches discipline. Right? To keep yourself on a schedule. That every Thursday at this time, I take my shower, I do this, and I prepare myself for Jumu'ah. Or if you want to do it Friday, right? Friday morning before going to school, or even prior to Jumu'ah is the best. Right? And to keep that routine is teaching of discipline. Right? It's allowed to delay to up to 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks is allowed. Right? One person, you miss it, you missed your Friday, something busy happened, you didn't have the chance. Right? But to go beyond that is sinful. Right? And then it's just irritating. Right? On top of that. Right? Especially pubic hair. Right? These things, to leave it for that long, right? It becomes very irritating, itchy, right? Then you're in public scratching when you shouldn't be scratching. People are looking at you. What's wrong with you, man? Right? We don't want those kinds of looks. Sahih? Correct? So once a week is doable. It's not difficult. Right? Right, so we already talked about tiny bit about certain discharge that comes from the male private part. Right? One of them is semen, right? Which, if a person is at least 12 years old, it's possible for them to have what's called ejaculation, where semen comes out. Right? And if that happens, then they are considered an adult. Right? And this could happen in what's called a wet dream. The actual name for it is called nocturnal emission. Nocturnal means at night, emissions means ejaculation. Right? The dream part is just what they call qaid ittifaqi. It's an accidental clause. It doesn't actually have to be a dream. Right? You could go to sleep, not see a single thing, but wake up and see wetness. Right? You have to make a ghusl. Right? And if you haven't had that before, you are now adult. Right? Or you could see a dream, right? Wake up completely dry. You don't have to make any ghusl whatsoever, and you're still not an adult. Right? Unless it happened already. Right? So it's not about the dream. It's all about that if one wakes up and finds that there's a wetness on their clothes, their underpants, or their body, right? Then they have to make a ghusl, because in a state of major impurity, which is what happens then, right? One is not allowed to pray. One is not allowed to even recite the Quran with their tongue, even if they don't touch it. Right? One is not allowed to touch the Quran. One is not allowed to enter the masjid. Right? Yeah.
You said that you should do ghusl.
Yeah.
What's that?
Okay, good. Right, so the ghusl is the ritual bath. It's a bath, but it's not just like sit back, hot water, bubbles, right, up to here. Right? It is to take a bath, which the Prophet ﷺ taught us about, meaning to wet the entire body with water. It's like a super wudu. Right? You know, you use the bathroom, you make wudu, and then you pray. Right? But this is the super wudu. You have to take a full shower, meaning every part of your body has to be wet. Right? And then, on top of that, to rinse out the mouth once, and to rinse out the nose once. Right? If once you've done that, right, then you are back in a major state of purity. You can pray, you can read Quran again, you can touch the Quran, you can enter the masjid. Right? But there are also other things that if they come out, right, they don't necessitate a bath. The only thing that necessitates a bath, that type of bath that we just explained, is semen itself, right, which is thick. And they actually give very gruesome descriptions in the books, right, that when it's wet, it smells like wet flour. And when it's dry, it smells like eggs. Right? I'm just telling you what the book says. Right? There may be some benefit to that. Someone wakes up and so they want to inspect it.
Can it happen more than once?
Yeah, it can happen. So once it happens the first time, right, then it can happen any time after that. Right? The wet dream, right? One of my teachers, he said that to have it too often is not good, but to not have it not often enough, right? To not have it at all is also not good, right? Because the semen builds up inside. Right? And it's kind of a release for that through this wet dream. So it can happen more than once. Right? And that semen itself, if it's on the underpants, it needs to be washed off. Right? An easy way to wash it off, just take, right, unless you can just throw it in the laundry machine if you can change it. But if you're in a hurry, right, you're sleeping over at someone's house, right? You only got that one pair of underwear, right? You just take the part that is wet, like that, and run it under the tap until you're reasonably sure that it's gone. That's it. Right? So other things that could come out, right? They only necessitate wudu. Anything else that comes out of the front private part or the back, right? Anything that comes out whatsoever, right? Then you have to make a wudu. Your wudu is broken, and you have to make a new wudu if you want to pray or if you want to touch the Quran. Right? So one of the things that could come out besides urine, right, that's not our discussion, right, is what's called pre-ejaculatory fluid. Right? It's a fluid that comes out at the time of desire, that if one has physical desires, right? Then this thin, clear kind of liquid will come out. Right? It is not necessary to make ghusl from that. Right? The semen itself is very thick, right? And it's very easy to distinguish between the two. But if it does come out, it breaks the wudu. Right? And it has to be one. It's impure itself, so if it gets on the clothes, you should wash it. Right? And one needs to make wudu. There's a third type which is not common. It's actually from a type of sickness, which is called wadi. Right? It may come out after urinating, right? Or if you carry something very heavy. But these are very rare. But that also falls under the same thing, that anything that comes out of the private part, right, breaks the wudu. Right? Except for semen. Then on top of that, you have to do the super wudu. Right? The ghusl. Tamam. So we talked about wet dreams, right? The dream part is not a necessity. Any wetness that you find out when you wake up, unless you're absolutely certain that it's something else, like urine or water, right? You wake up, right? You were so tired you fell asleep with a cup of water in your hand, right? You wake up, the cup of water is horizontal, and you find a bunch of wetness. Oh no, Ustad said I had to make ghusl if I find wetness. No, come on. And that's obviously the water. Right? And how can that water get like inside your pants? You would be surprised what people can do. Right? It's like, oh, I have to make a ghusl. No, it's a Slurpee. It's pink. What are you talking about? Right? So don't make ghusl from Slurpees. Okay, so one other aspect. Right? Sorry for all the gruesome details. Hopefully, that the male private part, right, can become what's called erect. Right? An erection is one that the male private part is actually kind of like a sponge. Right? It's very porous inside, and the blood flow that comes can actually fill in those pores, right, and make it hard. Right? Right? And that can happen for multiple reasons. One could be desire, right? And physical desires are something that Allah has created as a natural quality of men and women. Right? And actually, there are some narrations that the physical desire of women is more, but Allah has given them a lot of modesty. And that modesty kind of keeps back that desire. Right? So physical desire is a natural quality. Right? And it is part of the test of the youth, especially in this time, right, to hold off until marriage. Right? That marriage is the halal way to fulfill that desire. And actually, it is rewarding as well. Right? So, but physical desire, sexual desire, right? At that time, the male private part will get hard. Right? But there are other reasons as well. Like, for instance, you really got to use the bathroom. So there's like all kinds of pressure going on. Right? Things get hard in more ways than one. Right? Right? Also, and that happens commonly when someone wakes up from sleep. Because you had the bright idea of drinking a gallon of water. Well, what's a gallon? You guys don't use metric system. Sorry, I'm from America. Forgive me. What's a gallon? And 4 quarts. Okay. You have the bright idea of drinking 4 quarts of water before going to sleep. Right? All kinds of pressure build up in your bladder. Right? You wake up. Right? You might have what's called an erection as well. Right? But once after you urinate, it'll go away. Right? But because of that, right, especially if one doesn't have their own bathroom in their room, right, one should not wear clothes that are revealing. Because if one wakes up in the middle of the night and they have this erection, right, and walking around, somebody comes out and they see, it's not a good situation to put yourself in. Right? So don't wear clothes that are revealing. Right? So, any questions on that before we jump into the next gruesome part? We're almost done the gruesome stuff, so right, just bear with us. Hopefully you guys are ready to flood us with questions. inshallah. We're going to save some time for questions. Inshallah. So, no questions? So, okay. So, we already mentioned that sexual desire is a reality. Right? It is not, there's nothing wrong with you for having this desire. There's nothing wrong, it's a normal quality, right? But not every desire is followed. Right? Not every desire should be followed. And the human being has this aspect to them where it wants what it wants. Right? I want strawberry ice cream, I want strawberry ice cream. I want Kinder Bueno, I have to have Kinder Bueno. Right? That there's part of the human being which is kind of like an animal. Whatever desire it has to accomplish that desire. Right? But we are not just desire. We're not like animals. And the distinguishing factor between us and animals is our soul. That we have a soul. And that soul is constantly yearning to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That soul is yearning for remembrance of Allah, for the Quran, for prayer, in the midst of the night when everyone else is sleeping. Right? The soul is yearning for those types of things. Right? But the human being is in between those two states. That they have that animalistic side to them. Right? They have the desires, but they also have spiritual needs. And we mentioned about suicide. Right? The main factor, as was mentioned, that someone gives everything what their desires wants, but their soul is dying. They don't give what their soul wants. So just like our bodies, we need breakfast, lunch, dinner. Some people have 3 meals in between as well. Right? Then Ramadan, they eat iftar, but their iftar is just like a makeup for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all at once. Right? Right? Just like our bodies have needs, our souls have needs as well. Right? And to sacrifice the needs of our body, right, is beneficial to the soul. So, and you'll see that the people who are happiest in this world are the people who are most disciplined. They say no to their nafs. They say no to their lower desire out of seeking the greater good. Like for instance, right, I want to sleep, but it's Fajr time. Right? This is where the test is. The body, in its animal nature, wants to just keep sleeping, like a cow, just knocked out. I don't think cows lay down though. I think they sleep standing up. Imagine that. Alhamdulillah for laying down.
I don't think.
Okay.
Horses.
Horses lay down?
The horse stand.
Horses stand, right? Right. So the animal part of us wants to keep sleeping, right? It's cold. It's like 5 in the morning. Right. My father, he's not yet Muslim. Make dua for him. He said, "You wake up before the sun." It's true, right? So the body wants to keep sleeping, right? But the soul wants to pray Fajr, right? So this intellect that happens from the time of maturity, right, is there to decide in favor of the soul, right? We're going to sacrifice sleep because Allah, the creator of the heavens and the earth, wants us to do it because He knows that this is best for us in this life, in the grave, on the day of judgment, and in Jannah. Right? So we're going to sacrifice a little bit of sleep in order to please Allah, and then the soul gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And that animal part becomes weaker and weaker until people become, as one of the great scholars, he's from Morocco, he traveled to a place called Tarim in Yemen, in South Hadramaut, which is where we studied, alhamdulillah. And this is a long time ago. And he wrote a small treatise about his visit. So he came back from Hadramaut to Morocco, and he told his son that, "Yeah, son, you have to go visit those people because I found them to be more like angels than they are humans." Right? Because their souls they have fed their souls with every opportunity they had, and they kept their animal desires in check. Right? So the human being has desires, right? And there's a necessity for those desires, because if the human being did not have desires, nobody would have children and we'd all die. And the human race would be extinct. Question?
So, you were saying about the soul, how it knows we should pray Fajr, but all we want to do is go to sleep. So our intellect is telling us to pray Fajr, but how come we don't, if the soul desires it, how come we don't get the desire feeling? It's only that we've got to pray.
Yeah, so in the beginning, right, it's difficult. Right? In the beginning, it's a sacrifice because the animalistic part is stronger, usually. Right? For some people, it's not. Some people, it's very easy for them to pray Fajr. Right? But if the animal desire is very strong, right, in the beginning, it'll be difficult. Sacrifice. Just do it. Just get up and pray. Right? Right? And then after a while, what happens is, what used to be difficult now becomes second nature. It'll be very easy for you to pray. Right? And actually, until it gets to the extent that it would be difficult for you to miss Fajr. That your soul is strong enough that you're waking up before Fajr, already praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? But in the beginning, there's that challenge between the two. Right? And it's the intellect knowing that the next life is greater than this life. That this life is only 60 years, 70 years, if you're lucky. Right? I know people who've died at 26. Right? I know people who've died at 40. I know people who've died at 15. Right? Even family members who died at 36. Right? I'm 34, so we can die at any time. So the intellect is supposed to say, okay, look, at the maximum we're going to be here 60, 70 years. Right? Sacrifice, a little bit of sacrifice here and there for the 60, 70 years, and we have eternity in paradise. It's a good deal, right? It's a smart decision. Right? But most people are not that smart. Right? And this is why, because of that desire, is why people fail in diets and these things, right? Because the desire is, I know I shouldn't eat that extra cheesecake, but it's so good. Right? So to sacrifice the immediate pleasure for the long-term good, that's what the intellect is supposed to do. Right? Tamam. So human desire is natural. Human desire is natural, and right, we are only asked to fulfill our desires in a way that is allowed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Which is, and there's only one way, which is through marriage. That when you reach the age of to get married, right, that you will get married, and this is why making the institution of marriage easy for children is very important, right? And I think lots of times, right, people, they make too many conditions and their children are not able to get married, and therefore they fall into a lot of difficult situations. Right? Obviously, there are many cases where the child is not ready to get married. They're not mature. Right? They don't have any plan in life. That's different. Right? But these human desires are real. They are reality. Right? So, because of that, there are certain steps that we can take to minimize the desire and make it easy and make it easier for us to reach the time when we can get married, and then, right, and then one can fulfill their desires in a halal way. Right? The first and most important means is to lower one's gaze, to not look at anything haram. To not look at anything haram. Right? And we mentioned already, right, that a woman or any girl, right, who is not a family member who you cannot marry, right, a family member who you cannot marry, right, like a mother or sisters or an aunt, right, that for them you're allowed to look at, right, their hair, their face, right, the shin, if their gown doesn't go all the way down to the feet, that's not a problem, right? Their forearms, right? They're family members, right? But those who you can marry, right, which includes cousins, beware of cousins, right? Those who you can marry, you're not allowed to look at anything besides the face, the hands, and the feet. Right? Right? And that applies to pictures. That applies to pictures, that applies to images, silhouettes, right? Anything that, right, that will stir up the desire, physical desire, right, is not permissible to look at. And whatever is not permissible to look at is not permissible to touch. Right? And on top of that, even though you're allowed to look at the face of someone else who's not your family member, right? You're not allowed to touch her face. It'd be really weird also. Just, don't touch me. Right? You're allowed to look at her hands, but you're not allowed to shake her hand. Right? They're not a family member. Right? But you should be prepared for it though, because especially living in a Western country, it is culture, it is part of the culture that you meet someone, you shake their hand. Right? So instead of being like, astaghfirullah, get away from me. Right? People don't tend to like that. I know one guy, his wife, he became Muslim. His wife wasn't yet Muslim. They went to another Muslim family. Right? The wife that's not Muslim, tried to shake the hand of the other Muslim. She wasn't prepared ahead of time. Right? He put his hand behind his back and didn't say a single word. Till this day, she doesn't like Islam. Right? What have you accomplished? Till this day, every time she starts to think, oh, Islam is nice, oh yeah, but what about that guy, that rude guy? So, as a personal advice to you, prepare a very respectful answer from now. Prepare it, memorize it, have it on call at all times. Someone tries to shake your hand, boom, you just access the thing and you say it, right, and you'll be surprised how respectful, right, how much respect people will give you. One of our teachers, this might not work for you because you're not married, right? One of our teachers, Habib Ali al-Jifri, right? Anytime a situation like that will come up, he would say, I'm sorry, I promised my wife I would never touch another woman. You know how much a woman would respect that? Right? Imagine your wife, right? Imagine that woman just, wow, I wish I had a husband like that. Right? Not only does she not mind that you didn't shake her hand, but now she's about to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan rasulullah. Right? Have a respectful answer, right? Even if it's, right, to refuse in a very respectful manner. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm Muslim, and in our faith, that we don't touch the opposite gender out of respect for them. We have great respect for women, and we don't touch them unless through the contract of marriage.
You can shake another man's hand, right?
Yeah, you can shake another man's hand. You can give him a high five behind the back. You can, right, a dab, whatever you want to do. Okay. Right, but other women, especially, right? Now, even though the body, if a woman is wearing clothes, right? Like for instance, you can't look at her anything besides the face, the hands, and the feet, right? So say woman comes in, right? Everything's covered. Miraculously, right? She's got some crazy head thingy on, right? All of her skin is covered, but everything is completely tight, right? If it shows the form of the body, you're not allowed to look at it as well, right? Even though you're not looking at her skin, right? You're not allowed to look at her body, the shape of her body, right? And this is why the Muslim women, right? They wear non-revealing clothes. They wear loose clothing. Right, that doesn't show the shape of their body, or at least they should, right? Right? And we mentioned already that this applies to pictures. And this applies to videos. This applies to video, right? Humans in video games. I don't know if they have human video games now. I wouldn't be surprised. Right? So also the male part that between the navel and the knees, right? Even if it's another person of the same gender, you're not allowed to look at it. You're not allowed to show it. You're not allowed to look at it. Right? So if you're going to go to gym class, buy long shorts, right? Or wear sweatpants or gym track pants. Right? Don't wear, right, the short shorts. I don't think it's in style anymore, is it? Short shorts? Who's here is our style expert? How short or how long?
How long or short?
Yeah, so the knee should be covered, right? Like it should be covered at all times, not like it's covered, but then like as soon as you lift your leg, there it goes, right? hello everyone, here's my knee.
Like
And-
half of your knee or the whole knee?
sorry?
You mean like half of your knee should be covered? Like
Whole knee. The whole knee. Whole knee.
What if it's like your mom's friends who are like, you're getting so tall and then they give you a hug and then like,
Yeah, that's difficult. Good question, right? So mom's friends, cousins, right? Your uncle's wife, right? These people are they're considered non-mahram. They're not
not blood related.
they're not blood related, right? Technically, right? That they're not really the family who you can show anything to. Even though your family, you're not allowed to show between your navel and knee. So we're not talking about that anymore, right? So generally, this is there's a lot of ignorance in this, right? People shaking hands with cousins, and the Prophet said, like, beware of the brother-in-law, right? Or for you guys, it would be the sister-in-law. Said the brother-in-law is death, because people, they're very, very, very lax when it comes to the brother-in-law. Oh, it's just my brother, right? My wife can stay here alone, right? He's here, he'll take care of her. Sorry. Right? So many marriages have broken up because of that, right? Because of that laxity. And anything that causes corruption on a small level is prohibited, even in situations where it's not something that one's scared of. All right, those situations you have to be very tactful, right? If you're the victim, somebody hugs you, right, and you're not like actively hugging back, then you're not going to be asked about that, right? And then there's the lesser of two evils, right? Anyone here converts? Anyone here converts? Your dad's a convert. Okay, so for converts, it's much more difficult, right? Because, like in my family, they don't go for handshakes. They go straight for the home run. They go for the hug. Right? So I asked my teacher, like, how do I get out of this? He said the lesser of two evils is the handshake. Right? Or you can do that one of those like hands are floating in the air kind of, like, they don't ask, can I hug you? No, they just, like, if you're not prepared, you might get tackled. Right?
So my cousins, for example, they're all female, but they don't wear hijab yet. So what should I do in a situation like that?
So you're not responsible for them, right? But right, especially when you're getting older, right, you should try not to mingle with them too much, right? To be respectful, to keep a respectful distance, to keep it formal, right? Don't touch them, right? Try not to touch them, try not to hug them, right? And just be friendly, but not flirty, right? If you want. We're going to talk about that though, like how to relationship with the opposite gender. Any last questions before we move on? Okay, so there are certain things that are common in this time that weren't common in the past. Right? And right now, we all know for a fact that we have most definitely have an enemy. Who is our enemy? Sorry, I just heard mumbles. Shaitan. Right? So Shaitan, he wants you to go to hell forever. It's very blunt, but he wants you to go to hell forever. He wants you to burn in torment in the hellfire for eternity. He doesn't want you to go to Jannah. He doesn't want you to be happy. He wants you to do everything which will lead you to your destruction forever. Right? And that's all he cares about. He's not merciful, but he's very, very deceiving. Right? He may show you something that looks cool. Everybody's talking about it. Right? Everybody in school is like, yeah, you're cool if you do this. All of it is shaitan. Right? And they're just army of shaitan. Right? There are human beings who are shaitans as well. Right? And they are trying, whether to be intentionally or unintentionally, they're trying to take you away from Jannah, from Allah, from that which will actually be your success in this life and the next. Right? So one of the most biggest tribulations to happen in this time, which is directly targeted to the youth, right? And don't think that they've been targeting the youth for a very long time. Okay? And most of the tribulations that come up start with the youth. I have a sister, she's 10 years old. Right? When she was about 8, she was watching cartoons, and I overheard in the cartoon, right, that one of the cartoon characters has 2 fathers.
What cartoon?
I have no idea what it's called. 2 fathers. Why does she need to know about that? Why is that like, why are they showing kids that? There's a plot behind it. There's a reason. Don't think it's just a coincidence. Right? They're trying to slowly implant in the minds that this is fine, that this is okay. Right? It's not okay. Right? Alhamdulillah, we have revelation. We're not just falling into shaitan's trap. But one of the biggest things is pornography. Right? I'll be straightforward with it. It's pornography. Right? And I was kind of back and forth of whether we should go into this, because I don't want to open doors. But it's a reality. And if I don't talk about it, you're going to find it anyway. Right? Anyone who has how many people here have their own phone? How many people have access to a computer at home? In a private room. In a room that's not in front of everybody. Okay. Right? There are things that they try to show on the internet, right, that are haram. And automatically, because of your innocence, you'll know that it's wrong. You'll know that you shouldn't look at it. Right? And it involves, right, nudity, right, sexual actions, or whatever it may be. Right? You'll know that you shouldn't look at it. Get away from it as fast as you can. Just as fast as you would get away from a burning fire, get even faster away from it. Because it will destroy your heart. It will destroy your soul. It will destroy even your physical and mental state. It will destroy your marriage later on if you do get married. Right? It will destroy your ability to fulfill the rights of that marriage sexually, right? And the amount of harms. Right? But shaitan presents it in a way, oh wow, that's great. Desires start stirring up, right? Immediate pleasures, right? But long-term devastation, long-term, right, addictions, marriages are broken up, homes are broken up. Right? Even physically, there is something called erectile dysfunction. Right? We already talked about the erection. Right? That by watching things like this constantly, right, one's tolerance of desire goes higher. That it takes more for them to feel pleasure. Right? Till it gets to a point where they don't feel pleasure at all. Right? Wife is there, they feel nothing. Right? And they're not able to engage in intercourse with their own spouse because it doesn't work. As our teacher, who was very blunt about this, and there's la haya fid din, there's no shyness in regards to our religion. These things are realities. And he said in Urdu, any of you guys speak Urdu? He said, plug hai, lekin kehraba nahi hai. You know what it means?
G?
Any of you guys know what that means? We have a G. He knows Urdu. So plug hai, plug, outlet, right? Lekin kahraba nahi hai. Kahraba means electricity. There's a plug, it goes in, but there's no electricity. It doesn't work. There's a plug, but it doesn't work. You guys do the math, right? The part is there, but it's useless. It's useless, right? And all of that starts from now. Right? If you can, get blockers, add blockers on your... And I have a little sister, she can program her own iPad. You guys know how to do these things. Add blockers, right? You go on your own, parental controls. You don't have to be the parent to turn on parental controls. Right? Turn on these things. Get them out of your life. Remove it. If your friends are talking about it, right, warn them. If you really care about them, warn them. If not, just leave them. Right? Tamam. Right, and then one last thing before we get to the final part is about being honest about marriage. Many of you are very young. Right? Some of you are still, I think majority were 12 and 13. Right? But eventually you will want to get married. Right? And when that time comes, right, one you can try to delay as much as you want, right? So if you want to finish school, or if you want to finish college first, or get a job first, right? Those are ideals, right? We can't live in an idealistic society all the time. We have to be realistic sometimes, right? Some people will be able to do that. They'll wait until they're 30, they have a full-time job, they have their degree, everything, and then they get married, right? But some people, they're dying. Right? They need to get married earlier than that, right? But a lot of people, they keep it inside. They don't tell their parents because they're ashamed, they're shy, or they don't want their parents to yell at them, right? And that's a separate issue. We should have a class for parents as well, right? But to be honest, just to go to your parents and say, I need to get married. I feel that I need to get married. Right? Be honest with them, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's respectful. Right? Generally, in earlier cultures and even Islam itself, right, people would get married early. And in other societies, it's easier because you have a stronger family net, you have a stronger extended family, you have a lot of support. Right? In Yemen, where we studied, right, a classmate of mine, he married at 19, his wife is 16. Right? What they do in Tarim is that they'll just build another level on the house that they already own. Right? They just build another level. They live there. You want to go downstairs? Is your brother or sister? You go downstairs again. There's your mom and dad. Right? All the support you need is there. Right? But that's not practical here. Right? You can't just build another floor on every house. It's harder here. It's more difficult. Right? There's more things to think about. There's more things on both sides, for both families. Right? But it will not help the situation if you just keep it to yourself. Right? At least express it to your parent. At least tell them honestly. Right? And then sit with them and try to figure out a way, right, to plan out your future. Plan out, okay, you want to do this first, and then you can get married. Right? Or if you feel that you should get married now, then how are we going to plan it in such a way that you're able to take care of your spouse financially? How are you going to continue your school? How is she going to continue her school? Just be honest, right? And consult. Be honest and consult and make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there are means to delay that necessity, right? One is lowering the gaze. Don't look at anything haram, you'll be fine for a long time, trust me, right? You'll be good for a long time, right? Stay away from looking at anything haram, whether they be actual people in your class or school, or pictures or video or whatever it is on the internet. Right? Secondly, right, fasting helps. Not eating a lot helps a lot also. So there's one last thing we wanted to talk about, and then we're just going to take the questions. Actually, you can start passing them up toward this, our CD Armar. The last thing is about companionship. Because the human being, as human beings, and as Muslims specifically, we have two main roles in our life. Go ahead. Right there and there. Your pick. But that one, you got to make sure you lock it, because there's some it's like some Harry Potter setup for locking the door. I don't know how. There's one there. I think somebody's there. And there's one there. The one with the yellow sign that says caution. It's caution on the outside and inside. So make sure you lock the door. Yeah, these guys are your bodyguards. Until you come out, they won't let anybody in. So the human being, as Muslims, we have two roles. One is that our lives is dedicated to pleasing Allah. the only one who deserves to be submitted to, the only one who deserves worship, right? Rappers, artists, actors, they don't deserve your worship. Right? They didn't create you. You're not going to go back to them when you die to answer for what you did. They're not going to help you in the next life, right? Allah is your goal, right? But Allah has made for us two roles. One is to worship Him personally, that our personal worship to Allah, and the second is to treat creation with good character, right? And to fulfill the roles that we have been put in, because all of us are children of someone. So we're children, we're siblings, we're nephews, right? We're friends, we're classmates. Right? We have all of these different roles in our lives. Eventually, you'll become, right, a husband, a father, right? Someone's uncle or a grandfather eventually, right? So these roles that we've been put in are a responsibility, that we have to treat them in a proper way. Right? One of the most important roles is friendship, right? Because, right, and it's really important to choose your friends properly. And if you really want to know who's a good friend, right, here, take this as a principle. مَنْ نَصَحَكَ فَقَدْ أَحَبَّكَ. Whoever puts you in your place when you're wrong, when you did something bad and they tell you, you shouldn't have done that. Or that you're going off the path, you're going very astray, you're doing bad things, and they tell you, don't do that, that's your good friend. Keep them, right? Because they have your best interest in mind. They love you, right? وَمَنْ دَاهَنَكَ فَقَدْ خَانَكَ. And whoever just flatters you, oh, you're cool, right? You stole a candy bar from the store, and they're all cheering you on, that was the coolest thing of all time. Those are the worst friends to have. Stay away from them, because they don't have your best interest in mind. If the cops were to catch you at that point, they're not going to be there just to bail you out. Trust me.
Well, you wouldn't be very good if you did that either.
No, you're not good. Exactly. So if you're not good, you should have someone on your side to tell you that you're not doing good, to keep you straight. And it's good to have that. And if you see your friend doing something wrong, don't cheer them on. Cheering them on, that's way out the picture. But don't be silent. Tell them, you shouldn't do that. You're going to ruin your life. You're going to ruin your future. Okay? You see a friend, all right, literal situation. You see a friend, right, they come to you and they say, look, I just got some marijuana. I'm going to go smoke it, right? What do you tell them? What should you tell them?
Like, if it's a friend that you trust, like if it's a friend that you trust, you can respectfully decline. But if it's just one of those people who you find as an acquaintance, I would probably just ignore them.
But what if they're not trying to get you to do it? They got it all for themselves. They're stingy, right? They're just telling you that I'm going to go do it, and you really care about them. They're good friends.
And I would just tell them, like, not to do it.
Yeah.
In general, like,
Good.
why and how it can affect them.
Good. Smart answer, right? Tell them not to do it, and tell them why they shouldn't do it, right? What are the consequences of doing it, right? Right. So, and this is the principle by which you can tell a real friend from a fake friend, because a fake friend, the only reason that they're your friend is because they gain something out of it, right? Because they get something out of it. It's like a business transaction, right? If you're cool, they're your friend, therefore they're cool, right? Or they're lonely, therefore, right? They make friends with you, so therefore they're not lonely anymore. It's selfish. It's only for their own personal benefit. But a real friend, right, that they're not looking to get anything from you, right? That they have your best interest in mind, that they are concerned about you. Right? They don't want you to go down the wrong path. They won't let you destroy yourself. Right? I personally have had many friends who are highly addicted to drugs. Right? One of my classmates was found. He had fallen off a building in Philadelphia. Right? They don't know whether he was pushed or whether he jumped, but he was addicted to drugs as well, right? Constantly. And all of them, every single one of them, had the same quality in mind, that if I were to do something wrong, they would cheer me on. They did not have my best interest in mind. Right? They just wanted some entertainment.
You know how he fell off the building? Is he still alive?
No, he died. I think he was 25. He died. Right? So these things are realities. Right? Right? So any friends, right, even if they're not forcing you to join them, but if any friends that are doing drugs, or any friends that are drinking alcohol, or any friends that are like into going to parties, or this ridiculous music that are out there today, right? Stay away from. Right? Keep wholesome friends. Right? Certain things can be overlooked. The guy loves Manchester. We can deal with that. Right? He loves the Maple Leafs. Right? May Allah forgive him, but we can deal with that. Right? We can deal with that. Right? He likes video games. We can deal with that. Right? But anybody who is clearly doing anything illegal or anything that is clearly haram, right? We have concern for them. We're not just like every man for themselves. Do what you want. We have concern for them. We try to advise them, but we can't force people to go to Jannah. You can't drag anybody to Jannah with you, right? But keep yourself at a distance. Keep yourself at a distance, right? And there's an extra difficulty here in Canada because right, there's a big difference between halal and legal. Something might be legal, but doesn't mean that it's halal. Right? And I was absolutely astonished when I heard that. What is the minimum drinking age of alcohol here?
21.
Is it 21? 18. 21 is U.S. and 21 is U.S. 18 is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Right? So right, these things are realities. Right? Anybody here entering into high school? You guys use high school? Right? Yeah. So anyone going to high school, right? Majority of high school, I wasn't even Muslim at the time of being in high school, right? From experience, majority of high school is bragging and boasting, right? And exaggerated claims of I did this, I did that. Most of it is a lie, right? But alcohol is a reality, right? Parties, a reality, right? The things that we talked about already, about looking at haram things, is a reality. Right? Stay away from those friends. Stay away from those types of people. Save yourself a lifetime of headache. Okay, so right, how about women? How about right? You have female classmates, right? They're not the enemy. They don't have cooties, right? You're not going to get sick if you walk past them, right? They are human beings as well, and they deserve to be respected. Right? But we have principles, and we have limits. That part of our respecting them, right, is to keep our distance, right, for their sake and for our sake, right? So how do we deal with a classmate, right? First thing, right, is respect. We respect them, right? It's not like you walk in a room, a girl walks in a room, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Right? No, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be the weird guy, right? Unless you want to be the weird guy. Right? But the ideal situation is to keep it formal. Just keep it formal. Right? Don't be informal with the opposite gender. Right? Don't be jokey, right? Flirty. Right? Just be formal. They say hi, you say hi back. Right? They give you a homework assignment, right, or a group project. You have to do it. Do it in a formal way. Right? Okay, what do we have to do? Okay, I'll do this, you do this, we'll do it. Right?
What happens if they break your sunglasses?
They break your sunglasses? Then you can either forgive them, right, or go to the authority. Right? And go to the teacher or whatever you have to do. Or just get a new pair of sunglasses. Right? But you're not allowed to break their sunglasses. Especially if you have to touch them in the process. Right? Don't break other people's sunglasses. Right? But keep it formal. right? Especially those who are going into higher grades, like senior year, junior year, or even into college thereafter, right? You might have group projects, and there might be women involved, and you might have to do it after school hours. So how do you navigate that? Don't do it in a private place. Don't meet up in a private place. Meet up in a public place, right? If you can get out of it completely, that's the best, right? Just say, excuse me, teacher, could you pair me up with some people of the same gender? That would be best. Or to make it more than one, to have a group of people, multiple people, right? Don't meet up in private places, right? Meet up in public places, like a library where everybody's around, right? Don't exchange phone numbers, exchange emails. Emails are much more formal. Right? If you have to do a project together, you have to communicate to meet at a certain time, use email. Email is very formal. Right? WhatsApp is not very formal at all. Right? Then you get the lovey emojis, and right? Then everything's downhill from there. Right? Especially the triple heart one, that's it. That's game over. Right? But in general, keep friends with the same gender. Right? While at the same time having respect for the women. How are we on time? Decent. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ, he gave us some principles that we can live with, right? Al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, falyanzur ahadukum man yukhalil. The Prophet ﷺ said, a person is on the religion of their friend. So be careful of who you befriend. Right? Be careful of who you choose to be your friend. Right? One way to do it, that would you like to stand next to this person on the day of judgment in front of Allah? Right? Imagine, right, you come out of your grave, right? Your soul is put back in your body, you're standing on the day of judgment, right? The sun is 1 mile away, and you're standing next to some rapper dude with a crazy mohawk and a bunch of tattoos, and I would just be like, oh my God, what did I do? Right? That's terrible. Right? Do you want to be standing next to them on that day? Or do you want to be standing next to the Prophet ﷺ, or the righteous, or the scholars, or the... So choose your friends, right? And people don't have to be like, they come in with giant turban to school, I'm a sheikh. Right? You don't have to get that guy as a friend, right? Just somebody who's respectful, right? Somebody who's dignified, has good character, right? Is not mean and oppressive to women, right? Most of high school, right, is just boasting against women, right? Boasting about women, boasting claims about what one did, right? Or just belittling women. Respecting women is a sign of manhood. Respecting women is a sign of chivalry. And what the Prophet ﷺ told the companion who asked him for permission to do fornication, meaning to have intercourse outside of marriage, he said, would you like that to be done to your mother? He said, no. Right? He said, would you like that to be done with your sister? He said, no. He said, also, people do not want that to be done to their mother. People don't want that to be done to their sister. Right? You have a mother. You have sisters. You have women in your family who you respect. Those women in your school or other places, they're also part of someone's family. They deserve to be respected as well. Right? So any friends that you have are belittling women, they're not real men. They're not real men. They're shayateen. Right? It's a sign of a dead heart to belittle women. Also, right, to have some sort of role model, right? Someone you look up to, someone that you say, okay, I want to be like that. Right? And it doesn't have to be completely religious, even though that's... Right? Idealistically, we have one ultimate role model, which is the Prophet ﷺ. But the Prophet ﷺ, he's a role model in religious aspects and in other than religious aspects. He's a role model in every aspect of life. You want to be a governor, he's the greatest governor. You want to be a leader, he's the greatest leader. You want to be a brave, right? You want to be brave, he's the greatest of those who are brave. Right? You want to be charitable, he's the greatest. You want to solve the economics problems of Medina or of your country, he's the greatest example. Right? He drained the swamps. He completely cured Medina of a terrible sickness when he entered. He is the leader in every aspect of life. It's not just about salah. He is a leader in being a father. He's a leader in being a husband. He's a leader in being a son. He's a leader in being a friend. Right? And he speaks on behalf of Allah. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right, so lastly, just a few qualities of true manhood, which is called rujula or futuwa. Right, one is chivalry. Anyone here know what chivalry means? Is it true that chivalry is dead? I hope not. Sidi Omar, would you like to enlighten us? Shiver? Like really cold? It's close, I guess.
Nobility in treating others.
Nobility in?
How you treat others.
Nobility in how you treat others. I like it. What? Code of conduct. Good. Right. How you treat others, dignified. You want to say it? Okay. You know, if you guys ever go to an auction, right? Don't do this, because you might end up bidding for something that you didn't want to bid. Oh, bid, right? $1,000. That's the false alarm hand raise. Don't do that. All right, so to treat people with nobility, right? So some qualities of a chivalrous person, right? And these things used to be taught, right?
Are those the questions?
Yeah, right. You can just give it to him. Right, so one, right, I'll just list them and then we'll have some practical aspects. Respect for women, we already talked about. Respect for parents, one's own parents specifically, but also anyone who is older in age. Right? Anyone who is elder in age, to respect them. Right? And we don't have a lot of time to go into details, but there's one hadith that we can use as a principle as well. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Birru aba'akum tabarrakum abna'ukum." You respect your parents, your children will respect you. Right? Just think to yourself, if you had a kid like yourself, right, would your hair still be black? Or would you already be gray? I know for a fact that if I raised myself the way I was when I was young, I would have a full head of gray hair. Alhamdulillah for Islam. Right? Respect your parents, and your children will respect you. Right? Also, وَتَعِفُّ تَعِفَّ نِسَاؤُكُمْ. And you be chaste, right? You wait till marriage, right? You be modest, you don't, right, flirt with the opposite gender, and that's how your women will be later on, meaning your wife, your daughters, right? They will also be modest, they will also be chaste, they will also be dignified, right? But if we disobey our parents and we, right, treat women, right, with disrespect or in the wrong way, then it wouldn't be far-fetched that our children treat us that way and that our daughters later on go out with some guy like us, right? Or right, they come home, right, with some random kid who, right, if you look at them, they look just like they look like oneself when they were young, right? And then you just think, how did I treat women when I was young? Right? So that's the principle. Treat your parents good, your children will treat you good. Right? Treat your women good, and your women, meaning the women in your life, will be good as well. Right? Being forgiving is a sign of manhood, not fighting. Right? The Prophet said, "Laysa shadidu bisur'ah." Right? The strong person is not the one who can knock down someone else. The strong person is one who can control their anger. Someone who can control their anger. Right? To be principled, to have principles in life. Like, no, I don't do that. Sorry. Right? To be firm on one's principles. To have goals in life, to be driven, to be disciplined, to wake up at a certain time, to go to sleep at a certain time. Right? To know when to say no. Right? And to be selfless, to treat others the way that you would like to be treated yourself. Right? Treat people with good character. And so that's most of what we wanted to talk about. We wanted to leave some time for these questions. MashaAllah. Good questions, MashaAllah. Okay, so the first question is, what is the ruling of masturbation? Very good question. I actually had it here, but... Right, so masturbation is not permissible, right? The only permissible outlet for physical sexual desires is marriage. And that's all, right? Self-stimulation in any form is haram, and also can lead to the same harms that we mentioned about pornography, right? Plug hai, lekin kahraba nahi hai, right? There's a private part, but it doesn't work, right? Because of these self-stimulation, right? And there's many marriages that they're in difficulty because the husband can't perform, right? Why? Because prior to marriage, he was addicted to masturbation, and it's addicting, right? Right? Yeah, that's sufficient. It's not permissible, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Nakihul yadi mal'un," right? The one who marries their own hand is cursed. And cursed meaning far from the mercy of Allah, right? But if one has already done it, right, then the door of repentance is always open. If you ask Allah for forgiveness with sincerity, Allah will forgive you, right? But the condition of sincerity is that one intends to never do it again, right? To quit, right, may be difficult, and may have to consult, right, what are steps to quit, right? One would be to try to not always be, right, or not to take too long in the shower, not to wait, right, not to be alone too often, right? Obviously, lowering one's gaze, right, not watching anything haram, right? These are all steps, right? For instance, one wakes up, they want to take a shower, right? In and out. Take a shower, don't waste time, because then shaitan starts tricking you, right? Nobody can see you now, right? So, in and out of the bathroom, right? To not stay in private places too long, right? These are just means, right? But in ultimate, that when we have a difficulty, we turn to Allah. That is, we have access to the Creator of the heavens and earth at all times. Any difficulty you face, don't try to go through it yourself. Ask Allah for help, and He will help you. Right? Right. So the Quran does mention that وَالَّذِينَ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ, that those who guard their private parts, meaning they guard their chastity, they guard their virginity, right? إِلَّا عَلَى أَزْوَاجِهِمْ أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُم, except for with their spouses. So that is allowed, right? وَفَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ, whoever seeks beyond that, meaning other than spouses, meaning physical release from other than spouses, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ, then they are the ones who have transgressed. Right? So the only way Allah has permitted it is through a spouse, right? And in doing so, one will get reward for that. Right, so there's a question here about shaving the beard. I never said to shave the beard, right?
No, like control.
So keeping it trimmed, that fihi khilaf, right? To keep it nice is the sunnah. Right? To keep it nice, to keep it, right? The scholars have differed as far as the ideal length of the beard, right? The most expansive opinion is that as long as it's still called a beard, right? That, whereas others they had higher conditions, but to keep it nice, right? To keep all there. So what you'll have is, if you have a beard, you'll have kind of like stray hairs coming out. Right? Those ones to keep it nice, right? But by combing and oiling, right? And now they sell actual beard oil, right? You can go if you can get some good olive oil, that'll work just as good, right? And that'll keep it nice. don't know what that says. How does one pop the question about marriage? If one does intend to marry, right, the ideal way is to go through the parents, right? And traditionally, one would not, idealistically, one would not directly propose to a girl, and they would actually go to the father after consulting their own parents, right, and then go to the father of that girl, and then formally propose in that direction, right? Or many times the women of the family will take care of it, right? The mother said, okay, you should marry so-and-so girl. She's a nice girl. She's from a nice family, right? And then the mother herself will go to the other family and bring the topic up, right? But the only things that are completely impermissible is what we've talked about already: touching, right? Flirting, right? All of these things, right? But in the end, she would still need permission from her parents anyway. But to go through the family, there's a blessing in it, right? Because then you have the consent of both families, and it's not just the marriage of two people, it's the joining of two whole families, right? And if you have family support, life becomes so much easier during marriage, especially if you have kids. If you go against your parents and you just go elope somewhere, right, and you have kids and you need help later on, you're not going to have any family support, and that would be very difficult. What's the Wi-Fi password? Is sex haram? Who wants to answer this? Is sex haram?
Before marriage, yes, but after,
Right. Before marriage, it is haram. After marriage, it is a good deed. You are rewarded for it. You are rewarded for it. With your spouse, yeah. After marriage, meaning with that one person who you married, right? As the Prophet ﷺ said, وَفِي بُضْعِ أَحْدِكُمْ صَدَقَةٌ, and in fulfilling one's desires with their spouse, there's a charity. So the Sahaba are like, what? We get rewarded for fulfilling our desires? So the Prophet said, he broke it down. He was really straightforward with them. He said, look, if this person did it in a haram way, would he get sin? Said, yeah. So therefore, if he does it in a halal way, he should get a reward, right? It's like a double reward. When did you convert to Islam, and what was the reason behind converting? I converted in September 12th, 2008. And the reason of converting was life was unbearable. I found out my brother was Muslim, asked him all kinds of questions, and every question that I asked him, the answer of that question was exactly what I was looking for. But I didn't know what it was that I was looking for. Right? And I already mentioned, but many of my friends have either died, committed suicide, have drug abuse problems. Right? One of my closest friends, he was poisoned by his girlfriend. He died. He was an ex-cop, actually. Right? So imagine being in that situation where you're surrounded by depressed people, and you're surrounded by all of the wrong direction. Every possible thing that you could think of that one would do to try to relieve their stress, all of it was wrong. And it just led to more stress and more depression and more. Right? But then, alhamdulillah for Islam. Alhamdulillah for reality. That's all? I'm sure you guys have more questions than that. We still have 7 minutes. I'll give you guys 1 minute to start writing, and then another minute to pass. Don't be shy. Anything. This is the only opportunity. This one looks like it was meant to be thrown at me. Is vaping haram? Good question. That's a good question. That's a good question. So, doing anything that will physically harm you is haram. Right? Whether that be smoking cigarettes, smoking marijuana, drinking alcohol, vaping, right? Chewing tobacco. Right? I don't want to give you, I'm not going to name every possible thing, right? Right? Overusing prescription medicines, right? Anything that is reasonably certain that will harm you is haram to do. Anything that it could possibly harm you, right, is disliked to do. Right? So vaping is haram. Smoking cigarettes as well is haram. Right? Drinking alcohol that's obvious. Haram.
Is there a certain style in which we should keep our hair?
MashaAllah, good question. You actually reminded me of something. Right? The way that you should keep your hair is a way that is dignified. Right? There is one specific way of a hairstyle which the Prophet prohibited, which tends to be this trend of these days, which is called qaza'. Qaza' is for you to shave one part of your hair and leave the other part full. Have you seen it before? Right? Not just a blend or like a fade, but like completely shaved, right? And one part is completely full. Right? So that is prohibited and sinful. And the Prophet ﷺ saw a man with that type of hairstyle, and he said that either shave all of it or leave all of it. And he told him. Right? Other than that, it is disliked to do anything that resembles women. Right? For a man to dress in any way that resembles a woman, or to keep their hair in a way that is feminine. Right? And that goes back to custom. Right? So if women keep their hair in a certain way, for a man to do that would be disliked. Right? Would be resembling. Can you get high on Advil? You'll probably die. The medicine like Advil and Tylenol, right, Panadol, and these things, they have a very bad effect on the kidney. You won't get high, right? You will definitely vomit, and if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, you'll die. Right? Your spleen will explode, your kidney will give up, and you will die. And you don't want to die like that. Right, which one was the one? How do you handle interest? Don't. Next question. Interest is not permissible to take or to give. Right? And interest is, if you were to trace back all of the causes of the recent financial crash, all of it goes back to things that are haram in Islam as far as business dealings. Right? Every single one of them. Right? And interest is at the foremost of them. It causes the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer. It causes people to such a disparity between those who have $1 million houses and 35 bedrooms and 15 bathrooms, and people who don't even have enough water to drink, and the water that they have is killing them. And the cause of that is leaving the teachings of Islam, because the teachings of Islam on every aspect of life are the solution. Right? And there are many even modern philosophers and economists who are saying exactly the same thing that our Prophet said 1400 years ago. Tell us, is there a certain age after puberty that you cannot have marriage? There may be a certain age legally in the Canadian law. I don't know what the minimum age for marriage is, but Islamically, if someone is considered an adult, they are suitable for marriage. Right? That is by the age of puberty. Right? So but this is also in a context where a girl, even though she's 15 years old, that she was already taking care of a whole family, that they are very mature at that time. That a man, even though 15 years old, Like Sayyid Ali radiallahu anhu, he married when he was 21, and Sayyida Fatima Zahra, she was 16. Right? But these were people who were absolutely mature. They were men and women. They were not little kids with Dora the Explorer backpacks twirling their gum in their mouth. Right? And they were mature people. So if one is, right, legally, right, if one has reached the age of puberty, technically they can get married, but it would be highly disliked for them to get married if they're not reasonable, sure, or certain that they can fulfill the rights of the marriage, right, which would also include financially, right, mentally, emotionally, right, physically. Right. This one mentions about the accepting drugs from friends. Alhamdulillah, prior to Islam, Allah protected me from a lot of these things. And one of the biggest reasons why I was protected from a lot of these things is because I saw how bad these things were, how bad these things affected other people. So at the age of 14, I used to play pool. You guys know billiards, pool? Pool. So I played pool professionally from 14 to 22. Right? At 22, so the pool hall life is the worst of creation. Right? As they say, the freaks come out at night. No, in the daytime, they're in the pool hall. Right? Then they come out at night. Right? So, but because I was able to see people who had gambling problems, drug problems, right, abuse problems, right, I saw in a bad, it wasn't glorified to me. I saw in a bad image, in its natural image, and I was able, alhamdulillah, and protected from a lot of it. MashaAllah, now all the questions are coming in. Where were you guys in the beginning? Fresh Prince song.
What was the question?
Okay. Why can't I even play Monopoly? Right. They're kind of connected. Why are video games haram? Right. Generally, these types of things it's not explicitly haram, but Monopoly specifically, right, it causes nothing but argumentation, right? It starts off fun and ends up as a war. It's absolute warfare at the end, right? Better to choose Scrabble or like, right, Jenga or something, right? Something that actually makes you think, because the basis behind Monopoly is to just destroy your opponent and take all their wealth, which is highly un-Islamic, right? And the game is just ridiculously long, 8 hours in a row.
8 hours?
Yeah. If you have four players, it could go very long. I don't know what that says. What are the rights of marriage? The rights of marriage for men in regards to their spouse, right, is to provide a shelter, food, clothing, right, according to the level that the woman herself was accustomed to when she was raised, right, in the society that she was raised, to keep her at that level, right? And that's the bare minimum. Also on top of that, right, it is to keep her in an emotionally stable, physically safe environment, right? To help her, or to give her the means of seeking Islamic knowledge. On top of that, to giving children, the children as well. I think that covers everything. Are these new also? Yeah, we answered these. So, okay. Should I even open that? What is Tinder? What is Tinder? Hmm? A dating app. Islamic one? Dating is haram. Mashallah. At least it's a serious question. Is uneven haircut haram? We mentioned that if it's grossly uneven, that one side is completely shaved and the other side is left, then it is sinful. Right? Is Tinder haram? Dating websites in and of themselves, right, are only a means. Right? If it leads to something haram, it's haram. Right? If it leads to, if it's done in the right way, I know many people that there are Islamic dating sites, right? Some of them, or marriage sites, choose my words properly, right? Where someone finds a suitable spouse and takes the proper, formal, right, appropriate means of meeting their parents, right, discussing important issues, and thinking about marriage. Right? If it's done like that in an appropriate way, where nothing specifically haram is done or disliked, right, then it would not be haram. But if there is flirting and unnecessary talking or meeting in private, right, then it would be haram. Right? Especially if it's a non-Muslim website and they don't have the same values that we have. Right? Is music permitted in Islam? We have a halal music. It's called nasheeds and qasidas. Right? Wheezy this and wheezy that and this mumble rap and all that. Stay away from it. It's not even good. It's bad. Right? Any music in which the lyrics glorify anything that's haram, if they are glorifying something that Allah has said that is haram, right? It is haram to do that. So if somebody is glorifying alcohol or drugs or even just love of worldliness and bragging about themselves and arrogance, belittling women, it will be haram to partake in that. You guys really need some handwriting assistance. There's a question. Instruments are, historically instruments are, there's a difference of opinion about many of them, but the relied upon opinion is that it's sinful to listen to that, right? Unless it's the duff. The duff is permitted, right? A basic drum is permitted. Sorry? Basic drums, just like a full-on rock concert, like guitars. It's better to stay away from it. Is writing slang haram? No. Right. Writing slang is not haram. If you write ain't instead of are not, it's not haram. Right? But writing sinful words and sinful things is haram. So if something has become popular speech, even though it's popular, if it's haram, right, then it's haram. Right? If it's talking about, if it's a curse word or anything, then these things are impermissible. Right? And they're not befitting for a dignified person. Right? Dignified people speak with knowledge. They speak good English. Right? They don't. It's not a bragging. You don't get bragging rights because your English is terrible. Sorry. And somebody's going to brag because they say ain't and aunt, right? What school did you go to? Right? And this is what we meant before about shaitan makes things seem cool, but they're not. They were never cool. And Right? What's so cool about a guy who's got 15 pounds of gold in his teeth? What's cool about that? It's a waste of money, first of all, right? How does he brush his teeth, second of all? Right? And what in the world is cool about that? Right? Like, for instance, all of these things, right? All you have to do is just end it with one sentence, and then you die. That's it. Oh, I have $1 billion yacht, and then you die. Now what? Right? I have 35 bedrooms, 15 bathrooms, right? And a 5-acre pool in the backyard, and then you die. Now what? Right? It goes to someone else. Right? Sayyid Ali radiallahu anhu. Okay. Question time is over. All right, no more questions. Let's finish these. We're out of time. Apology accepted. Sayyid Ali, he would go to the cemetery. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, he would go to the cemetery and he would say, "Inna amwalakum qad qussimat." That he would go to the cemetery and call to the people who are dead. And he would say that your wealth has already been distributed. Whatever you left behind, somebody else owns it now. Right? وَإِنَّ بُيُوتُكُمْ قَدْ سُكِّنَتْ. And your homes are now lived in by other people. وَإِنَّ أَزْوَاجَكُمْ قَدْ زُوِّجَتْ. And your wives, someone else is marrying them now because you're dead. Right? What do you have left? What do you have to benefit you? Okay, so just the last few questions. Okay, besides the immature questions. Okay. Is doing graffiti haram? If it's on someone else's property, then yes. If it's on someone else's property, then yes. Right? If you do it on your own notebook and they're not saying any haram words, then it's just art. Right? And art with words is better than art with living things. Is chess haram? Imam Shafi'i said it strengthens your brain as long as it doesn't distract you from prayer or anything that's more important. Is swearing a major sin? If you mean by swearing cursing, then cursing is sinful and it is not becoming of the believer. If you mean by swearing by swearing by Allah, like wallahi, right? Then it in and of itself is not sinful, but you better fulfill whatever you said. Because if you say wallahi I'm going to do this and you don't do it, right, then it's sinful. Right? And there's expiation that has to be done in order to make up for that. Is playing the clarinet in a music class haram, even though you're forced by your teacher? Right? If one can have their parent write a letter or respectfully go to the board of administration of the school, right, and try to get out of the class, then that would be best, right, if one wants to take that path. Right? If one has no other choice but to do it, right, there is room in the Sharia because of that necessity, to allow, right, only to the extent of the necessity. Right? But I think any respectful school, right, I think part of the legislated law as far as Board of Education is to respect religious requirements. Is killing animals haram? Killing animals in general is haram unless it is meant, if it's a specific animal that is killed in a specific way with respect and it's meant that they're going to eat that animal. Like slaughtering a chicken or slaughtering a goat or a cow or camels or anything permissible to eat. Just killing animals for fun is not permissible. All right, this has become a fiqh class. MashaAllah. Allah yarhamuh. MashaAllah. I don't know what language that is. Is eating animals that eat other animals haram? Right? Eating predatory animals is not permissible. It's haram. Right? So don't eat lions. Right? Don't eat bears.
I'd like to know how I'd get close enough.
Yeah, don't eat things that would eat you if they had the choice.
But in the Quran it said that anything from the sea is
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a general statement, but there's exceptions. Right? It's not meant to be completely general. Like, what else is in the sea that you know that you definitely couldn't eat? That would be difficult, but it wouldn't be haram. What about, like, what are those things that people always get cut on when they go scuba diving? No. No. They grow. They're not swimming. They just sit. Coral. Yeah, coral's in the sea also. It's a living thing. Can you eat it? You can try. Yeah, so it's not as general as you think.
You said your high school was in Philadelphia, right?
No, my high school was in New Jersey. I had a friend who died in Philadelphia. I wasn't born in West Philadelphia. On a playground. Alright, so Jazakumullah khair. May Allah reward you all for your honesty and your sincerity. May Allah preserve you and protect you from the corruption and tribulations that are aimed toward the youth in this time, right, which are aimed to other than the youth as well. May Allah protect you and keep you with good friends and good community and knowledge of religion and knowledge of your faith. And may Allah preserve your iman and strengthen it in your hearts and allow us all, every single one of us, to die on La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and be in Jannah for eternity, right, and not in the other place. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa sallam. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.